Despite being one of the most despised women in history, I bet you've never heard the story of China's Empress Cixi. Join us in this video as we take you on a trip to ancient China to see the shocking and mysterious life of Empress Cixi. The name Cixi translates to kind joy. But just as you'll soon find out, this empress was known to be anything but kind. You see, Princess Cixi had a reputation for being a brutal and manipulative empress. Then again, it's not uncommon for society to paint people wrongly because of a few bad decisions. So was this empress really bad, or was it just her people that painted her in a bad light? Well, in this case, it's a little of both. Let's dive a little into the history of Empress Cixi. Empress Cixi is recorded as the final ruler of the Qing Empire. She wasn't royal blood or anything. In fact, it was chance that led her to the palace. Cixi was born on November 29, 1835, to the Manchu family in the capital city of Beijing. When Cixi was born, the Qing Dynasty was in its prime and had a lot of influence. Soon after Cixi turned 16 years old, she was captured. Due to her beauty at the time, Cixi was handpicked to be one of the emperor's concubines, and therefore the king could call on her at any time to fulfill his sexual desires. In ancient China, once you're picked as an emperor's concubine, you have no other choice but to do his bidding both in bed and outside, plus you'll be prohibited from having sexual relations with any other man besides the emperor. Usually, these concubines are monitored by eunuchs at the palace to ensure they live by the emperor's rules. Cixi was one of the several hundreds of concubines he had. The only upside to this development was that she got to live in the royal courts of the palace. However, her entire life was under surveillance, and the emperor had the power to kill her at any time if she displeased him. But as luck would have it, Cixi became one of the emperor's favorite girls. Her luck got even better when she became pregnant and gave birth to the emperor's first son. This pretty much made her the queen at the time, since her son was the one to rule China after the death of her husband. However, things took a bad turn in 1860 when the British and French launched an attack on Beijing, causing Emperor Xianfeng and Cixi to run for their lives. The palace and several other parts of the kingdom were set ablaze, which drove the emperor into depression. He began to take alcohol and opium and eventually got infected with disease due to his severe addiction. The emperor finally passed away in 1861, but before his death, he nominated 8 people who would serve as regents for his son until he came of age to rule China. This meant these 8 people would make decisions and temporarily govern China until the new emperor was crowned. Cixi, at the time, held a very powerful position, since she was the mother of the soon-to-be emperor, and so her decisions at the court were pretty much undisputed. She slowly became the #1 regent after the death of her husband, until finally she assumed the role of empress. This was when she was given the official name Cixi. We don't know what sacrifices Cixi had to make in her rise to power. Politics in those times were far more dangerous. It was common for people to murder or poison one another in their pursuit of power. Cixi may have had to do this, and it's probably during this season that her ferocity and ruthlessness became known to all. But then again, she was just a mother trying to defend the throne for her child. Also, because Cixi was a woman amongst men, it's very likely she was hated by them and had to protect herself. It was a live or die situation. There were several assassination plots to try and bring down Cixi after her rise to power, but she overcame them all and maintained her influence and power. So now you know about the origin of Empress Cixi and her rise to power. Let's talk about what her reign was like. But before we go any further, remember to punch that like button and subscribe to our channel. And now, let's continue. Empress Cixi was known as a cunning, silent strategist, one who orchestrated several coups in the palace while maintaining a multifaceted personality. No doubt, Cixi is one of the most infamous rulers of the Qing Dynasty, as you'll always see her name referenced any time the Qing Dynasty is being discussed. Her reign was from 1861 to 1908, and she was a formidable ruler with great impact. However, much of Empress Cixi's impact was only felt and not revealed to be influenced by her. In fact, throughout her reign in the Qing Dynasty, her power was hidden behind the scenes. It is believed that she carried out secret agendas and assassinations, as the people around her who would have opposed her rule died mysteriously. Today, you'll find few details if you wish to dig into the palace life of the Dragon Empress, because nearly everyone who knew these details is long gone, and the Empress herself ensured everything was done in secrecy. Although there are many myths and stories surrounding her, there's no way to find out if these things are true. Empress Cixi rarely showed herself in public, even after the whole of China knew she had become empress. Her life was very much secluded for reasons unknown. Given how much of a private and a brutal ruler she was, we bet you're probably wondering how the Chinese Empire thrived during her reign. Well, it wasn't the best of times for China. You see, on the surface, Empress Cixi was just the mother of the emperor, but behind the scene, she was the one calling the shots. Her son's reign began in 1861 and ended in 1874. He died of opium disease, and it's believed that his mother influenced his addiction to opium and women, so he never had the time for kingdom matters and wouldn't get in her way. From 1875 to 1898, Cixi's nephew ruled as emperor. This was against the law, but Cixi forced it to happen because she wanted to maintain power. The little boy was only 3 years old, and so it meant Cixi would keep calling the shots for as long as she liked. All in all, she served as Empress Dowager for 47 years. But the crisis she brought wasn't only in the palace, but in the whole of China. In the first year of her leadership, there was a significant military crisis. Cixi established alliances with other insurgent leaders and formed an army of over 2 million soldiers. This army was what was used to enforce her will throughout her 47-year reign. In subsequent years of Cixi's rule, more crises came. Civil war broke out as other countries tried to invade China, but the Chinese fought off every army. The Qing Empire also began to decline during Cixi's rule because she was just focused on ruling and didn't care much about innovation or technology. And so as a result, the economy slowly began to suffer as China was slacking behind many other countries at the time in terms of industrialization. So many occupations were lost, businesses were affected, foreign workers were displaced by machines, and so on. Overall, the standard of living of the common people of China fell very low. Some natural catastrophes also occurred during this period, causing even more havoc. One such catastrophe was the overflowing of the Yellow River in 1898, drowning thousands of people, and the deadly drought that followed in 1900. Cixi passed away on November 6, 1908. It's believed she planned the poisoning of Emperor Guangxu, her now grown-up nephew, who was supposed to rule China but passed away the day before she died. Tests showed that he died of arsenic poisoning. After her death, Cixi was frequently depicted in the early 20th century plays. She was mostly referred to as a horrible antagonist, but a few modern researchers have viewed her as a woman who was simply caught up in the war of her time. The Dragon Lady did her best to rule and stay alive, given the cruelty of court life. Some of the stories of Cixi we know today were written by a local citizen of Beijing named Blackhouse. However, research has proven that most of his writing was untrue. They were simply made up to make the public see the Dragon Queen in a bad light. And besides, most of the stories told of her after her death were largely attributable to her unquenchable thirst for removing anyone and anything who wanted to stand as an obstacle in her path. But they forget it's just how politics were played back then. It was kill or be killed. Cixi must have had many enemies, especially considering she was a woman ruling in the midst of men. Who knows, if she didn't become the ruthless Dragon Lady, perhaps she may have never been able to secure her life and that of her child, who was to become emperor. And that's a wrap, guys. Do you think all the rumors about Empress Cixi are true? Let us know in the comments below. Remember to like and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on any of our next videos.